Kevin De Bruyne's journey is one of the most emotional and tragic stories in football. The hardships he endured make his rise to superstardom even more remarkable. From the very start, he faced adversity, abandoned by his foster family, nearly expelled from his academy, and later betrayed by his girlfriend with a teammate, leaving him mentally shattered. Branded a flop by the media, he refused to let failure define him. Instead, he channeled his pain into ambition, climbing to the very top, despite life continuously throwing obstacles in his way. This is the extraordinary story of Kevin De Bruyne. It all began in his backyard, where his parents forced him to train with his weaker foot after he kept breaking flower pots. In hindsight, it was a wise decision. By the age of 8, Kevin was already making waves at his local club, KVV Drongen. After 2 years, he boldly told his coach that training at KAA Gent was better and made the switch. But life at Gent wasn't easy. He wasn't a troublemaker, but his quiet nature and intense ambition unsettled those around him. Coaches and teammates struggled to understand him, trying to mold him into something more conventional. But De Bruyne was different. His determination was unshakable. One incident revealed his stubborn nature. After a dispute with a coach who constantly criticized him, Kevin clung to a goalpost, refusing to move until he felt understood. Hours passed, and by nightfall, the coach finally conceded, later admitting, "He's as stubborn as a mule, but that's what makes him great." As word of his talent spread, Genk saw his potential and convinced him to move across the country on his own to join their ranks. It was a life-changing decision, but it came with heartbreak. After a year in a boarding home, Genk arranged for their young players to live with foster families. De Bruyne, along with 2 teammates, moved in with a new family. He had always been socially awkward, and now, speaking with a different accent far from home, he felt lonelier than ever. Still, with his foster family, he found some sense of security, believing he had finally settled in. When the season ended, he returned home for summer break, confident that everything had gone well. Then, everything fell apart. As soon as he arrived, he found his mother in tears. She told him something that would shape the rest of his life. "They called. They don't want you back. The reason? It's about who you are." Those 5 words echoed in his mind. It's about who you are. He picked up a ball, ran to his backyard, and kicked it against the fence for hours, letting the anger and confusion consume him. But the worst part wasn't just being abandoned. It was that Genk had been contacted. The club agreed he was a problem, arranging for him to be placed in a different boarding home, one meant for troubled kids. In that moment, De Bruyne made a vow. In 2 months, he would be in the first team. He refused to return home as a failure. At 16, he had already played a few games for Genk's B team, but in his own words, he was a nobody. That summer, when he returned, he was a different player. A Friday night match where he started on the bench. When he finally came on, in the second half, he played like a man possessed. By the end of the match, he had scored 5 goals in a single half. 1 goal, they don't want you anymore. 2 goals, too quiet. 3 goals, too difficult. 4 goals, they don't want you. 5 goals, because of who you are. The performance was so extraordinary that Genk immediately promoted him to the first team. He had set a goal for himself to make it within 2 months. He had done it in just over 1. Suddenly, the same people who had cast him aside wanted him back. The club offered to pay his former foster family to take him in again. The family, in turn, insisted it had all been a misunderstanding. They claimed they had only meant for him to stay with them on weekends. But De Bruyne saw through it. He cut them off before they could finish, telling them plainly, "You threw me away, and now that I'm doing well, you want me back." Without waiting for a response, he turned his back on them and walked away. And great he became. In his first season with Genk's senior team, he barely played. In his second, he got more minutes. By the third, he was unstoppable. He racked up 5 goals and 16 assists, leading Genk to their first league title in nearly a decade, by the slimmest margin possible, just half a point. In Belgium, when teams are tied on points, their totals from the first stage of the season are rounded down. That year, the rounding made the difference. That same season, De Bruyne earned his first call-up to the Belgian national team. He made an immediate impression. Even veteran Vincent Kompany recalled how, after just one training session, players whispered among themselves, "Did you see that? He's only 19, and he's already the best player here." Interestingly, De Bruyne could have played for Burundi, his mother was born there, but there was never any doubt where his heart belonged. Despite his success, he never changed. His time at Genk was marked by moments of raw honesty. At 19, he confronted the team's star player, Elian Barda, accusing him of not working hard enough in training. In 2012, frustrated with the team's poor performances, he publicly declared, "I'm ashamed of my teammates. If you don't want to play, then leave." But in the end, it was De Bruyne who left, signing with Chelsea. The club saw him as the heir to Frank Lampard. But before he could prove himself, he was sent on loan to Werder Bremen. In Germany, he thrived. Unlike other young stars who dazzled with flashy tricks, De Bruyne played with a simplicity that was somehow even more impressive. As Johan Cruyff once said, "Football is simple, but playing simple football is the hardest thing." Even as Werder Bremen fought relegation, De Bruyne racked up 10 goals and 9 assists, earning the Bundesliga's Young Player of the Year award. The Premier League awaited. But just as he was set to return to Chelsea, his world came crashing down. His longtime girlfriend had cheated on him with one of his closest friends and teammates, Thibaut Courtois. Worse still, she made sure the media knew, saying that in one night, Courtois gave her more than De Bruyne had in 3 years. To add insult to injury, she justified it by claiming De Bruyne had cheated first. His form plummeted, and with Jose Mourinho losing faith in him, he was sold after just half. A season at Chelsea, 1 assist, no goals, a failure. His next destination? Wolfsburg, back to the Bundesliga. But instead of breaking him, the betrayal only made him stronger. He channeled his heartbreak into his football, refusing to let the past define him. Even as Courtois arrived at Chelsea, after De Bruyne's departure, what felt like the ultimate injustice, he refused to retaliate. When Belgium's national team coach gave him the power to decide if Courtois should be dropped, De Bruyne chose forgiveness. He put the team first. In his second season, he reached an entirely new level. With 16 goals and an astonishing 27 assists, 21 of them in the league, a Bundesliga record at the time, he led Wolfsburg to a second-place finish behind Bayern Munich and even lifted the SIL, German Cup. By the end of the season, he had earned the Bundesliga Player of the Year award and a spot on the Ballon d'Or shortlist. If people had doubted him before, there was no questioning his brilliance now. His personal life, too, took a positive turn. That same year, he met the woman who would become his wife. After years of dealing with public scrutiny and personal struggles, he was hesitant, unsure of himself. It was a friend who took his phone and sent the first message on his behalf. That small act led to a love that transformed his life. De Bruyne later admitted that without her, he would have never fully emerged from his shell. By the end of the year, they were expecting their first child together. However, happiness was soon interrupted by fear. One morning, his wife woke up bleeding. As he stood helpless in the hospital hallway, football faded into the background. It was in that moment he realized that life was about more than just the game. Fortunately, everything turned out fine, but the experience changed him. He no longer played with anger or a need to prove something. He played because he loved the game. That passion caught the attention of Manchester City, who signed him for a club record $76 million, making him one of the most expensive players in Premier League history. But with the price tag came scrutiny. English media labeled him a Chelsea reject, doubting whether he could truly succeed in England. However, one man saw his potential immediately: Pep Guardiola. Upon taking over at City, Guardiola sat De Bruyne down and told him plainly, "Kevin, you can be a top 5 player in the world, easily." It was a different approach than what De Bruyne was used to. No screaming, no tough love, just belief. And that belief changed everything. Over the following seasons, De Bruyne dismantled every criticism. In his second year under Guardiola, he dominated the league, registering 16 assists and leading City to a historic 100-point season, the first team ever to achieve that milestone. Meanwhile, on the international stage, he thrived. After years of underwhelming tournaments, he led Belgium to their greatest World Cup campaign in history. Partnering with Eden Hazard, he played a key role in taking down Brazil in the quarterfinals, before ultimately finishing third, the highest finish Belgium had ever achieved. By now, there was no doubt De Bruyne was one of the best in the world. But just as things reached their peak, another obstacle appeared. In 2019, injuries began to plague him. The day after his second son was born, he tore a ligament in his knee. As he sat at home, unable to even dress himself, he called his wife. For the first time, she saw him break down. "I'm going to be useless," he told her. "You're going to have 3 babies at home now." She was stunned. He hadn't cried at their wedding. He hadn't cried when their children were born. But take football away from him, and he was shattered. He later admitted, "Weddings and funerals, I'm a rock. But if you take football away from me, I'm done." When he finally returned, he did so with the fire of a man making up for lost time. The 2019-20 season became one of the greatest of his career. Despite City missing out on the title, De Bruyne equaled the Premier League's all-time assist record, with 20 assists, while scoring 13 goals of his own. He was named the league's best player and would have likely finished in the top 5 of the Ballon d'Or rankings, had the award not been cancelled that year. Since then, De Bruyne has only cemented his legacy. He has won multiple league titles and continued to dominate at Manchester City. And finally, the one thing that had long eluded him, the Champions League, was conquered, leading City to European glory. De Bruyne played a crucial role in securing their historic treble. As Guardiola once said, "Messi sits alone at the table, but Kevin can sit right next to him at the table." Now, with every major title to his name, Kevin De Bruyne's legacy is not just cemented, it is everlasting in football history. What do you think of De Bruyne's incredible journey? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more amazing football stories. Thank you for watching, and until next time.